We're living in a world where almost everything is constantly changing, more than even 10 years ago. It's mind-boggling. What we thought was lasting certainty 10 years ago is today being questioned. And now it's very important to be better prepared to understand what's happening next. There's also one very important thing to keep in mind. Humans generally don't change unless there's a reason. You may have been to therapy with your husband, your wife, or your kids. Why do you go to therapy? Because you have a problem. You don't go to therapy before you have a problem. And in a way, you could say that Europe is going to therapy right now. The therapy is, we had an argument with our partner, the United States, and now there's a divorce. Humans don't change unless it's about pain or love, those two things. It's important for us to remember that financial markets are also based on feelings, emotions, understanding, perceptions. This is the dangerous thing about artificial intelligence. We may find ourselves at a place where an artificial intelligence is suggesting financial measures, and we won't really know why. Talking about perception. I was in San Francisco 2 weeks ago for a speaking event, and I've been joking that many people talk about the self-driving car for 20 years. If you listen to Elon Musk, he's been talking about this arriving next year, every year. I figured I should make a video for you looking at my first drive in a self-driving car. And it felt totally safe while sitting in the back of the car. But this is San Francisco. The traffic in America is slow, it's organized. For the most part, people don't push it like they do in Germany, where I'm from. So today I want to share 4 simultaneous revolutions. First is geopolitics. We're moving from a world that was basically bipolar, the Soviet Union, the United States, to a unipolar America. And now that's over. You know what that means for money, for currencies, for the dominance of the dollar? The unipolarity of America is finishing. Maybe next week Trump will have another idea. But this is what's happening. Everything around us is going digital. Machines can talk, machines can hear, machines can be therapists, machines can fly the airplane, machines can be our partners, quantum computing, synthetic biology. Let's not forget the climate emergency. We tend to think that we have a lot of time, but if we go to 4 degrees of global warming, which is likely, given the current attitude, we're talking about 300 million climate refugees coming north. So this is a serious thing. Thankfully, climate change we can solve. We have the tech, we have the science, we have the money, we're missing the decision. And this is, of course, a big deal for every single business. Climate change is the #1 factor in the next decade. How do we deal with that? How do we invest? The next one is the new economy. I'm 64 years old. I'm a baby boomer. We cared very much about progress and jobs and financial benefit. Today, it's a different emphasis. People, planet, purpose, prosperity. My kids were born in America. They live in Germany now. They are thinking of themselves as being global citizens. The same as here. We are global citizens. So, multilateralism, globalization is not going to go away because the President of the United States decides so. We're moving to a new form of global thinking. 2025 is a reset year. The last time this happened, 1925, 1930 in Europe, before the Second World War, 1968 to 72 in the US. A big paradigm shift. That's where we are today. So you can expect substantial chaos, substantial confusion, new opportunities, and new developments. Again, when you go to therapy, if you find a way out, you have to go home and make a change. That's kind of where we are today. So those 4 things: geopolitical revolution, digital revolution, mostly AI, sustainability revolution, and purpose revolution. You have to understand these 4 things because we're not talking about the future like Star Trek. The future is here today. And basically what's going to happen in 5 years, the younger generation, 25 to 40, maybe 45, are taken over, because they're getting the money from my generation. And that means a change of thinking, a change of paradigm, a change of politics, pretty much across the board. So this idea of the bipolar, unipolar world with US dominance, the Pax Americana, the idea of America defining pretty much everything, it's the past. I think that's a good thing. It's good for Europe, to think about what that means when we live in a world like this. And we have global problems: energy, water, food, diseases. How are we ever going to live in a world that works if we don't collaborate on global problems? This is why in Europe now we're talking about united defense, united transportation, maybe even a common language, European, not just kidding, English. So that leads me to this. It's a global shift of power towards the East and, of course, the South. You see this chart showing you the EU's importance increases, but everybody else explodes. That means a shift of money, a shift of politics, probably more confusion, because there's a lot of things to be coordinated together. And this I've been talking about for 10 years, the United States of Europe. I know it sounds like a joke today when you say, what are you talking about? We don't agree on anything. But that's actually not true. We have a lot of issues with bureaucracy in Brussels and all of that stuff, yes. But in Europe, we agree on one thing, and that is that we're human. We want human benefit. Of course, there are also Americans who want to be human. It's not that simple. But basically, the current situation is forcing Europe to come together. And this will be fantastic for this region. And then we're going to see amazing things like this. A railroad connecting all European cities, substituting airplanes to a large degree. Travel from Glasgow to Kiev on the pan-European train. It sounds crazy now. It sounds just as crazy as Spotify giving us access to 100 million songs on the mobile phone, which is routine now. WhatsApp giving us free phone calls. So that's where we're going with the United States of Europe. Now in digital, exponential changes everywhere, which means all technology initially is pretty expensive, but gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, except for the iPhone. Right? But looking at this, battery technology. I mean, in 5 years, you can drive your electric car 1,000 kilometers. Who in their right mind would buy a regular car? Nobody. We're at the end of this period. In Germany, this is what the car industry is struggling with. The paradigm shift from hardware to software. Everything getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. That means artificial intelligence is very expensive now, eventually becomes as cheap as streaming music. So now that's basically a trend that we're seeing across all of it. This, sustainability and purpose, currently you could say that's declining. We look at many countries, especially the United States, where it's the official doctrine to no longer care about sustainability or to think about purpose. But this is temporary. So the current situation in the United States is actually a trigger for us to come back to what we really want. And we're going to see that play out as well. So this is going to move center stage. I call that the good future. I know you may think this is wishful thinking, but you got to have a vision about the future. And I think ultimately, this is where we are going. Tesla has lost 38% market value, not because of the cars. The cars are not so good either. But what Elon says is not good. So people are upset about Teslas. That shows you all technology today has to do with politics and policies. All technology. That makes it more complicated, but we're going to see more of this. It's quite clear that's a sign of the times. So one key realization for the first part, we are in a spot that means we have to hang on and figure out what the next thing is, because the old thing is breaking down, the new thing isn't here. That's where we are today. So that means opportunity, because the new thing is being built. The new digital currency is being built. The new world based on artificial intelligence is being built. The new education, the new geopolitics. It's a unique opportunity. A great report by the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation about the logic of the future. Yet what we see today is the logic of the past coming back in many places. I'll zero in on 5 different things. We're moving from this idea of natural sovereignty, one country for itself, to collective sovereignty. I know this is a difficult topic for you here, but clearly this isn't going to be about one country. It's going to be about a region or a group of countries, a collective sovereignty. This is the important angle. The focus not just on national interest, but on global interest. And this is hard to understand when you're looking at today and you're saying, oh, that's really everything I see is the other way around. And of course, the prime purveyor of that opinion is our friend in America, who is going back to the old logic, a broken down logic, a domination logic. Right? This clearly will not work, because the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, but to act with yesterday's logic. That describes, for example, the German car business until just recently. yesterday's logic. Instead of looking at the future, which they knew was coming 8 years ago, they decided to build the perfect diesel engine. That is amazing. Think about that for a second. You see all the signs, but you decide to stay with the old logic. It's like a bank saying, I'm going to stick with the fees. I'm going to stick with how we used to do things because it has always worked and will always work. But of course, you know that's not true. I used to be in the music business, and the record labels were adamant we'll never sell music on the internet because if we sell music on the internet, it becomes very cheap or free, and we don't have a business. You know, they like control. And then they said, oh yes, maybe streaming, Apple, Spotify can save the day. And today, whoop, we're back at 50 billion. Don't make that mistake. If you're in the financial industry, you got to think about tomorrow's logic, not today's logic. And I think this is the challenge for us, is to think about that. Okay. So you can see the logic of the future and the past. This is the S&P 500, Biden and Obama, 100 days into the first term. And this is Trump's curve, 100 days. Going back to the past is not a very good idea. After the announcement of the tariffs, JP Morgan said we have to be prepared for a global recession as a result of these tariffs. I cannot understand how you can use yesterday's logic to such an extent. That is basically the worst of the worst of the worst scenario. Not something you want to do with your business. Yesterday's logic, it's all about the economy. It's not. What good does an economy do if everything around us is collapsing? And that is what we're facing. So now people around 40 are thinking, yes, of course, I want to make money. I want to do good business, but I want to sustain the planet also. And we're willing to pay for that. We're going to see mandatory offsetting of travel. Every airline ticket will have a mandatory fee. Every time you go, you pay more. I have suggested to my airlines customers to include a mandatory fee for all frequent travelers to pay for offsetting. We're going to see a climate tax for eating meat. Think about that for a second. Then consider this. Our culture was boomer-centric. If you're between 50 and 70, you determine the politics and business. That is over. Now it's the people, especially women, 30 to 45 to 50, who are taking over the next 5 years. Moving on to the climate situation, this is the number one place to invest. Anything to do with fixing the climate problem. Batteries, software, artificial intelligence, fuel cells, agricultural software, green hydrogen, you name it. We're only 5 years away from that becoming the peak of the market. The new oil business is the green economy. And if you realize this and you shift your funds now while you still can away from Aramco and companies like that to companies who are producing the future rather than enforcing the past. See the slide here? If you happen to be around 30, you're on this curve here. See the millennials? The importance of the millennials? That says everything. Do not get in the way of the millennials and the Gen X. That would sink your business. And they will totally hate you if you don't make your business digital and if it's not sustainable. That's our reality now. We have to think about how we deal with that. Number 3, machines, AI, robots are no longer stupid. I wouldn't say that they're intelligent, because intelligence implies consciousness, agency. Humans are intelligent in 10 different ways. For example, if we meet later on, it takes 0.4 seconds to talk to each other and figure out who we are. Machines can't do that. I mean, I can figure out who you are without talking to you, just by getting a vibe, so to speak, right? Very difficult for a machine. This is a fuzzy world. The real world is fuzzy. It's not just based on data. But nevertheless, the perfect time to edit, that is the TTE, of a human is 1 second. So going from English to Armenian, the translator does it in 1 second. A machine is roughly at 2.5 seconds today. That's pretty good, but not good enough. When will that gap be closed? Hard to say. That's a very hard gap to close. Right? But machines become very good translators for simple things. Phone calls, Zoom calls, So the time for singularity, the convergence of humans and machines, that's getting to be pretty close. These graphs all show you the same message. Machines can now do better image recognition, reading comprehension, grade school math, code generation, you name it. Machines can pass the bar exam. Machines can be digital lawyers. But of course, a lawyer needs a few more things than logic. Thankfully, that's still very much the case. But machines are learning this. Here's the bottom line for your future, the convergence of human thinking and machine thinking. Now, I like to say this could be heaven or it could be hell. It could be heaven if you sit in your office and 40% of your work is routine. Now the machine is doing it. Calculating, making a slideshow, summarizing a PDF. That could be heaven in a way, kind of like Spotify is heaven for music in many ways. But it could also be hell, because if you're 90% doing routine work, such as at a call center, your job is toast. We're talking about 21 million people. It'll be a long time before a machine can understand Armenian and other languages as compared to English, yes, but Spanish, German. So how will that play out? Here's the bottom line. AI is a power tool. Okay? And you know what happens? People with a power tool work better than people without the power tool. So think about this for a second. You're working in construction. You have a bunch of doors to fix. You have a hammer and you have nails. And then you go to each door and you put in the nails all day long, all week long. Or you have a nail gun, a machine that shoots nails. With this machine, you do all the doors in one day. But the nail gun is dangerous. And shoot yourself in the foot. This is like AI. AI is a power tool for us, but we can shoot ourselves by relying too much on it, by not checking the result, by switching off, not thinking about it, by getting lazy. The worst thing about technology is that it may lead us to be utterly lazy. So we say, I'm not going to write the blog post, I'm not going to write the video script, I'm not going to write the book, I have the machine do it for me. So we have to make sure that we keep the human quality, because that power tool means we have to use it. Our jobs will not be replaced by machines, but people with better tools may replace us. Keep that in mind when you're thinking about your future job. Some jobs will be replaced. Of course, like I said earlier, the call center is on top of that list. But many jobs look like routine, like driving, but they're not really routine. I'll show you a great application called Google notebooklm. It's available for free around the world. It does exactly this. It takes a routine, like research, and gives me a power tool that I can use. So here in Google notebooklm, I can upload a 10,000-page document or 800 documents that make 10,000 pages, and then I can ask questions to the document. So I'm using Google Notebook LM, Google's AI, Gemini. Here I'm working on the future of education in preparation for my engagement. And here on the left, I have a bunch of sources I put together, articles and research reports and PDFs and YouTube videos, and all that stuff can be freely added here. And then here's the box where I ask questions. For example, how will technology reshape future learning methodologies? And then Google Notebook LM is going to give me an answer to my question. Personalized learning, immersive learning, gamification, a very powerful summary. Now I ask you, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? If you're a lawyer, imagine this. You have to read a lot of stuff. Can you rely on the answer? Maybe not entirely, but it's better than reading 10,000 pages for the first hour or so. So it's a good start. It's also perfect for lazy people. But we have to think about this. Just like you use Google Maps. Everywhere around the world, I have the same discussion with people. We use Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever you're using. And then we look at it and we say, no, that can't be true because, you're from Yerevan. You know the difference. So you ignore it. And this is what we have to do with AI. We have to be able to ignore it and say no. But here's the reality. A lot of our jobs are going digital. That means the tools will do the job. That is the job that's commodity work. A lot of that in financial business is like this. Just making sure it's okay, make sure I have the right information. Humans doing routine to machines doing routines. This will change financial transactions forever. We just have to get it to be good enough so we can trust it. And this is, of course, one of the reasons why we have to be a little bit suspicious of the results for the time being. So we're heading into a future where AI is really all about this. Cognification, augmentation, helping us to do things better, virtualization, and maybe automation. I call that Kava, and it's all about what I call tool AI. As a tool that I use to make myself better. Not AI that I use to replace myself. There is no such thing. You can only replace yourself if you already are working like a robot. I mean, if you do nothing else but pick up the phone and say yes, no, then you're already a robot. The machines can do that. It's important to remember, don't let your kids learn stuff that the machines can do, because the machines will learn it sooner or later. So, AI agents. You heard about this a lot. It's a big deal now. We can build an AI that is like an agent for me. This bank called Capital One in the US has an agent called eNote that will go and do stuff like it will check on my recurring charges on my account to make sure that they're accurate. It will make the tax documents for me. So I can speak to the agent. I can say, look at my account and tell me all the things that look funny. I mean, I can do that myself, but amazing if I can just get a flag, commodity work. And there, if the AI makes a wrong flag, it's not a big deal. NATO air traffic control, probably not, because it's much more material than this. So this is our future, and it's not just for men, but also for women. But the AI refused to give me an image of a female banker. This is the logic, of course, of machines. So we're surrounded by all these agents, and they will do the work for us. We have to be very careful with this because we want to keep our own relevance, and we want to stay on top of it. We don't want to outsource everything. Sooner or later, before you know it, the AI does your work, the AI does your dating, the AI does your banking, and the AI lives your life. We don't want that because I think that's taken it a step too far. So, machine will do the routine work. That's inevitable. So if your job is 20% routine, you can deal with that. If it's 50% routine, you'll find other good things to do, or you work less. Maybe in 10 years, we're all going to work just 50% for the same money. That is entirely possible. This is not because of technology, rather this will be subject to the rules of the market. So we must prepare to think about this because the machine intelligence and the body, the embodied person that we are, machines aren't embodied. They're missing a lot of that for the time being, create kind of a digital human. And a lot of companies are building digital humans, which I think is suspicious if you ask me. I would prefer for that to be still my own body so I can decide how much of that I want to give out. The question really is, how far is too far? Anything that's really good, eating, drinking, smoking, too much of a good thing is a very bad thing. We don't make smoking entirely illegal. I mean, in some countries it is. It is your choice to kill yourself. We can keep smoking, but we have rules around it. 400 million people around the world are obese, dying from eating. More people are dying from eating than from hunger. Too much of a good thing is a very bad thing. Too much technology could be a very bad thing when we get used to saying we're just going to let this happen and be a part and do very little. So, important, the pyramid of work. The lower part of this pyramid is being covered by machines. Intellectual knowledge, logic, data, information. That's currently still very early. But if you're looking at Google LM or ChatGPT, the latest version where you can make images, really authentic images and text, you can anticipate that happening quicker and quicker. Okay. So here's the secret. Our part as knowledge workers is to go higher up the pyramid, not compete with machines. There will be no machine that you can compete with to be smarter or faster or better. There is no such thing. Today, maybe. 3 years, no way. 10 years, no. You're not going to compete with the logic of a machine. A machine can memorize Wikipedia in 3 minutes. It doesn't mean that the machine is an expert. It just knows all the data. It's quite different. So this is what our schools will do in the future. Will teach us to have quiet knowledge, understanding, wisdom, purpose, consciousness, human agency, all of those things. The difficult things. Why do you hire somebody today? You hire them because they're a good human. You don't hire them because they have logic. You need a bit more than that because the machine can do the logic. So very important to think of that. Research from McKinsey showing the future entails more people knowing about tech, that's obvious, right? But more about social and emotional intelligence. That is where we come in. So understanding technology, clearly, if you don't understand tech, you're in trouble. But it doesn't mean that we all have to be engineers. 10 years ago, everybody said our kids should learn how to program. It's always good to know how to program. But being a programmer will not save your day because guess what? The machines can program themselves and will. So here's the thing, a quote from 1901. One machine can do the work of 50 ordinary men. He talked about men. This was 1901, right? No machine can do the work of an extraordinary woman. We have to become more extraordinary. If you want to keep your job or advance in your job, you need to be different, extraordinary. That's how we do it, I think, in the future. So, bottom line is this. If you work like a robot will take your job. Well, it's not new, is it? But it's brutal now. Think about that 10 years from now. We have to be the opposite. And this is why I think we need to think about what we want from those machines and how far we're going to take this. So that leads me to the next topic. The tools of artificial intelligence could be great. I mean, for me, they're already great. So I can translate my videos, I can research. I researched Armenia before I got here. Usually it would take me a day or two to look at the links and make notes and check out images. Now I use all kinds of different AI search engines. I can drill very deeply, very quickly, and see some context. Very powerful stuff. But an AI that's a master, a general intelligence, that would not end well. We're essentially in the era of intelligent assistance, IA. So that's what we have today, is intelligence like Siri or like Google Maps or like Salesforce, Einstein and Amazon, of course, and all of these things like Alexa. They're assistant devices. They don't think. I mean, you can call it what you want, but the thinking is a machine in its own universe. So that's actually very good. I would say that's innovative, possibly disruptive. But a machine that knows everything in real time about everybody, that has a brain like all humans combined with an IQ of 50,000, that is a very bad idea. Not only would we not know what it does, we could also not remotely hope to keep it under control. So I make a line here and I say, okay, let's go here, but let's not attempt to build a machine like this. This is the official goal of OpenAI, to build that machine. The biggest tech company in the world in terms of AI. Now that's saying I'm going to build nuclear bombs because they could be useful for my goals. Because, this here is about business. It's just better tools. Let people build tools. Let them do stuff to make our lives better. That is disruptive, but it's about tools. This is not about tools. It's about rebuilding humanity. Not such a good idea. Foolish. This is what would happen if we built an artificial general intelligence. Productivity would explode because the machine could do all the work, but our jobs would be like this. It would basically be the end of 50 to 70% of all jobs. No, we're talking about 10 years. That's something we don't really want to do. So let's go back to this for a second. I have my special guest here today, the CEO of NVIDIA, Jason Huang.
You'll assemble a whole bunch of chatbots, and that's the way software is going to be built someday. How do we build software in the future? It is unlikely that you'll write it from scratch or write a whole bunch of Python code or anything like that. It is very likely that you assemble a team of AIs. There's probably going to be a super AI that you use that takes the mission that you give it and breaks it down into an execution plan. Some of that execution plan could be handed off to another NIM. That NIM would maybe understand SAP. The language of SAP is ABAP.
So this is the CEO of the most successful company in history in technology that says we're going to build software by machines writing it together with other machines. If you plan to be a programmer, what does that mean? Is it correct? Of course, they do have lots of programmers working for NVIDIA. So we'll see what happens with this. But clearly, it's a big debate. Do we believe the agenda of OpenAI? OpenAI sometimes reminds me of the movie Blade Runner, the first one. The good one, 1982, where the tower is the organization that builds the replicants. And this is really their agenda, is to build this AGI, high autonomy, high generality, and high intelligence. And I think we should not really think about that as a technology plot. That's more like a domination mission. The bottom line of this chapter is there are no winners in a race to artificial general intelligence. There are only losers. Just like there's only losers in the nuclear arms race. The only winner in the race to artificial intelligence to dominate the world in military and business terms is the AI itself. The chairman of the FCC said last year, it is very likely we're going to have a global stock market crash because of the role of artificial intelligence. I think that is quite accurate. So we're going to need to figure out safeguards and regulations to make this positive. Otherwise, we may live in a world like this, the beautiful world of AGI. There's one issue here, and that is there's no humans. So we don't want to live in a world where we become like pets to the AI. That leads me to the last point, that technology alone is not enough. This is obviously true, especially in financial and banking, when you think about how do you get the customer to like you. It's not just by having better tools. It's by being a better brand, by having a larger story. You see all the global conflicts we're looking at today, like I showed in the beginning. Where do they go? They're all going up. Technology will not solve the Russia-Ukraine crisis or Palestine, Israel, or anything else. It will not solve climate emergency. It is a tool that we use to solve. But we still need to actually get together and agree. So this is the future about technology, is for us to collaborate on what we want from it. How much AI do we want? What rights do we have? Who's in charge? This is going to be a crucial question. We don't want the AI to be in charge of our lives. That's kind of what it's gearing up to be. The same about climate emergency. Looking at all the numbers, you can safely say today we have utterly failed. This is the ppm, pollution per particle. This curve is mind-boggling. Global temperatures, invention of the steam engine, and boom, the sky is the limit. We could do all of this. It would be a great opportunity for us to kind of reboot how we look at the world. We're going to need to collaborate more. 26 trillion is the amount of damage done by climate emergency-related factors in the financial markets by 2050. I think we're going to want to do something about that. So I summarize, you have to make a choice about the future. We cannot afford to go into the future based on fear. When you go into the future based on fear, you say no to everything and you vote for bad people. That is because they also say no to everything. So it's a very good fit. We have to say yes to technology, but we also have to keep what we want to be. Great saying from the famous futurist, Barbara Hubbard, your mindset contains your future. Is your mindset open, interested, flexible, optimistic? That's the mindset you need for the future. You should spend 1 hour per day to understand the signals, to receive the signals. I can't tell you how many times I do a session with the CEO of a big company, hundreds of thousands of employees, and this person will not listen to any signals coming to him from his people or from his family. We have to listen what the future is saying. 1 hour per day. Read books, look at things. I'm not talking about Netflix here. I'm talking about understanding what's coming. 1 hour per day to build your future mindset. Because the future will be like this in a radical new way very quickly. We always think that the future is so far away, but climate emergency isn't about 2040. It's about 2030. And you're at the front of all of that stuff happening. We have to also understand that intelligence isn't consciousness. Machines can be intelligent, but they're not conscious. We do not want machines that don't have consciousness and human agency to decide for us. We want them to help us decide. Because the bottom line is this: machines don't think or feel, they don't have hunches, they don't understand, they don't imagine, and they certainly don't care. They're machines. They are there to get the job done. You don't want your car to have an opinion. You want your car to transport you. So that's what we should look for when we think about artificial intelligence. Humans aren't machines. So we need to keep the human inside. We need to protect what makes us human, and we need to have organizations that help us do this. Very important principle with AI, keep the human in the loop. Make sure that the human is still in charge, that the AI is not running away by itself. Many people think today, especially in banks and financial organizations, they can use AI to fire as many people as possible. I mean, let's be honest, that is the biggest cost. So maybe the AI can get so good that I don't hire more people. But this is an illusion, of course, because you are confusing the tool with the purpose. The tool can never do what a human does. It's a tool. So as we're going here with AI, let's not pursue laziness. Let's not pursue disengagement. Let's make sure the machines become competent. That's all I'm asking. I want the machine to get the job done, to show me the sales trends, to analyze the data, to look at my MRI, all the really practical stuff. I don't want the machine to start thinking about the purpose of the world. So, summary and action items, the 4 revolution. We must act with tomorrow's logic. Look at what you do every day and ask yourself, am I applying yesterday's logic? In a strange way, sometimes you have to live in yesterday's logic because it makes money today. At the same time, you have to transfer yourself into the new logic. You have to kind of be both. That is, of course, the challenge. Understand the 4 revolutions and what it means. And for crying out loud, let's stop talking about that everything will end badly. This conversation about the end of the world as we know it isn't new. Let's stay positive. As you see the future, so you act. As you act, so you become. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We think of the future as opportunity, then we're open to it. If we think of it as a disaster, we're closing down. And we can see that, of course, reflected in so many ways. Choose the good future. famous philosopher once said, to do good is to generate happiness, to do evil is to generate pain. This is, of course, very important for banking and financial. We want to generate happiness with the customer, whatever that means. We don't want to generate pain. When you gear up AI, think about competence, think about keeping the human in the loop, and remember, too much of a good thing is a very bad thing. This last one is really important. We need collaboration on this. We need companies to take responsibility and not just resort to the quickest way. So I want to thank you very much for your time and attention. My final statement is from famous futurist Buckminster Fuller. We are to be architects of the future, not its victims. We're building our future. The future isn't coming to us from Silicon Valley or from China. We're making the future ourselves. It's very important to realize this. It's a choice we make.